Continue on with the topic that my colleague, Mr. Austin Scott, broached, and that is how we communicate the value of genetically modified crops. In the row crop industry, I think it's become a volatile issue. And most notably, Roundup Ready technology, things like that the consumer doesn't necessarily understand. But to all of you, what would you suggest in terms of communicating the value to the consumer? Because I think we can get into all the technicals, which you did, Mr. Levine, and I appreciate that. But the consumers without a science background are making a decision based on an emotional response on some information that's out there in the marketplace. Can y'all weigh in on that? What can be done sort of collectively to soften the blow that has really, I think, been harmful to you?
Well, I'll take a first stab at it. I think when some of these technologies, most of this technology is being used in research on humans and animals right now. I think when some of this technology really creates tremendous value around fighting disease and some of these other issues in humans, I think it will turn. I believe that once the public sees the great value in some of these tools, its perception will change, but it will take time and education. We as an industry need to do a better job of talking about it in the right terms and sort of more consumer-friendly terms. But I think the progress that some of these technologies like CRISPR-9 will have on human fighting, things like Alzheimer's and other stuff like that will get a lot of publicity, and ultimately that will start to lessen the blow. The problem is it takes many years and time, but this technology is here. It's not going away.
I think it's my observation, having worked in the ag industry for a long time and been an ag communicator, that the ag industry tends to be reactive. And they wait for a consumer perception to occur and then respond. So I guess what I'm looking for from the ag industry, and particularly I think from y'all from specialty crop perspective, is how do we blunt that? How do we get out there in advance and paint this picture of what's coming and prepare the consumers for the good that they can expect from this, as opposed to waiting for the attacks?
I think that's a very good point. I'll just add a thought to that. I think part of it is education of what crop breeding is and what's happened historically, how these crops that we have today came about. They're through natural mutations. This is just another tool, a more precise tool, in order to improve crops, in order to feed the world. So I think that part of it is educating people that this has occurred throughout history. This is why we're different than our forebears. And that fundamental understanding should help provide a foundation so we can convince people or have people accept different methods of plant breeding that are necessary.
Go ahead.
Yes. It's my understanding that CRISPR-Cas9 is not a requirement to be even labeled as a GMO currently. And the reason for that, they're taking genes, and Mr. Levin can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but they're taking genes from within the same species. In other words, we're not taking a fish gene and putting it in a strawberry or a tomato. They're developing varieties, and I prefer to call it smart hybridization, because hybridization has been around for many years, and that's how we cross everything, but it's all just trial and error. But with this smart hybridization, you're able to get a variety that's close, but maybe it's got one little defect of susceptibility to a disease. So they can snip that bad gene out, put in a good gene from another, say if we're talking about strawberries, so it's within the same species. You're not taking something else. So
but
it's
this conversation we're having right now, which I find fascinating, but the consumers, you're scaring.
I agree.
And that's my whole point, is that we have to stop using the term genetically modified organism is a scary sound. It's very sciencey. It instills sort of a fear in the consumer. So how do we, I guess I would say a mule is a good example of a GMO. Somebody mentioned the bucolic picture of farming 40 acres and a mule. Yeah, they've been around a long, long time. But how do we overcome that negative association? And the science sometimes doesn't help us in that regard.
If I could just add something real quick. I just spoke to the bio conference, and you're right, with CRISPR, we're doing it all over again because we're telling everybody what's good for them. And they think there's a profit motivation in that. They don't trust us, so we've got to bring other people into the tent. We've got to ask them what their concerns are, and we've got to address those concerns early on.
And my time's run out, but I want to help you in every way I can in that regard. I'll yield back.